Well, hi, everyone. As you know, we're going through different segments of this Believe in Our City event that we held recently. And this segment is kind of me trying to put some of my thoughts together on this topic. I've had so many wonderful opportunities through this podcast and through other engagements that I've had to learn and listen and to talk with people, certainly from Stand Together, from the National Constitution Center, and really trying to find how do we put these things together. One of the things we talk about the most at Stand Together was these principles of human progress. What are these ideas, these big ideas that can help us get better? How do we approach some of the social challenges that we have with some of these principles that can help us move forward? And we want to do that because I wanted to do that and talk about it a little bit because we've spent a lot of time in the community following the legacy of generosity that was set by my parents and so many other leaders in our community. We've given to the community like so many others have. But yet these challenges persist. And if it was just generosity that would solve them, then they would have been solved long ago. But there's more to it. It's more complicated than that. And I was trying to wrestle with it and trying to get my head around it a little bit as well and share some of those thoughts with the group. So unfortunately, it's just me this time. You'll be stuck with listening to me, but hopefully it's helpful for you to get an idea of how this event came together.
We believe, and have always believed, in this country that man was created in the image of God, that he was given talents and responsibilities and was instructed to use them to make this world a better place in which to live. And you see, this is the really great thing of America.
It's time to discover what binds us together, and finding it has the power to transform our world. That's what I believe. How about you?
As I mentioned last night, this is and as Joe referenced, a great group across our community that is somewhat unique, and that's one of the main ideas of bringing people together in that way. And last night I talked a little bit about the fact that as we make presentations here or have conversations, may not all be on the same page, and that having a little grace might be a good thing for all of us. That we can have a little grace and say, okay, I may not be there, but I can see where you're coming from, and still we can find a connection along the way. There's a few other elements that we've talked about with the Thrive and Prosper team a lot, some ideas that we wanted to have kind of surrounding every discussion and the work that we do. The first one is that it starts with humility. We don't have the answers. And you're not going to see that today. We're not going to dive down that. We don't have the answers. We believe they're out there and we can find them together, but we have to approach things with a level of humility that we don't know. And so we want to start with that. The second thing is that if we get together and we keep talking to each other and we have grace, we can build trust. And then we can move more quickly. We can move further because we'll have those relationships built, we'll build trust amongst each other, and then we can find our way to better solutions going forward to help our community grow and be even better. The next idea kind of around that was curiosity. We want to keep asking questions. We want to keep challenging things and kind of keep exploring, go deeper, really understand. As we talked a little bit about last night with the conversation with Jeff, gaining our understanding from one another. And still, let's stay curious as we go forward here. And the last thing was this idea of an abundance mentality. That if something's happening over here, we don't have to stop that to do something over here. We can figure out a way to do both. There's capacity and capability in this community to be able to do multiple things. We just have to figure out how to do that. And a lot of times we may stop ourselves thinking we don't have the resources, there's not enough, and maybe there is a constraint, but there's usually probably an answer too, that we can find a way around, find the next person, and so we have to have this idea of an abundance mentality. So those are just around our discussion this morning a little bit as well. But let me kind of dive in a little bit deeper from last night to kind of set the stage today, to go deeper, because what we really want to talk about is this idea of the human action model. And a human action model is the fact that you kind of start at a place where I'm unsettled, I'm unhappy, it's just not right the way things are. And then you move to saying, well, there's got to be a better way. So you kind of start to think and dream a little bit and create, if you will, a vision for a better way. And then you say, well, that's great, but then we have to kind of get to an action plan. And I want to walk through kind of that process a little bit and maybe invite you to think about some of the ideas that will be presented in a new way, but also don't ever want to stop you from thinking of your own ideas in the same process as we go forward. So let's start with the first piece of being unsettled. And this is kind of like Monday morning quarterbacking. This is kind of like, talk radio or sports radio of what happened before. There's lots of things that we can all do and talk about how we're unsettled. And we see that around the country today, lots of unsettling situations. We saw that in our own community a few years ago, about 4 years ago. We saw that here. We're very unsettled. And we start to experience some of the mob or rioting, some of the lawlessness that Jeff talked about that don't really comport with a civil society. Certainly protests is fine, but peaceful. So how do we think about this unsettled nature? So when things go wrong, we all have been in places where things go wrong. How do you approach it? I had an experience many years ago. Some of you will remember the Plaza Towers when it was first built was downtown here. And at that time, somewhere in the 90s, as I recall, that building was not built right. And my dad and Jay were, and Amway was part of it. I think they donated the land or something. Somebody built the building, and it didn't go well. All the stuff that they put on the side of the building did not stick to the side of the building. It fell off. There were nets around so the bricks didn't fall and kill people that were walking next to the building. Ventilation was bad. The toilets backed up, so it did not smell really good. Things were falling off it. The whole thing was a disaster. And I happened to be with some of my siblings in the Van Andel second generation in a meeting where this was discussed. And there was two paths forward. The first path was call it quits, take it down, take the insurance money, live to fight another day. And the other path was go back in, rebuild it, a lot more risk, a lot more cost, go that direction. I thought it was a pretty easy decision. I thought certainly they're going to want to take it down. Certainly they're going to go that way. And if we do, we should make a movie about it. This was the time of Die Hard, all that sort of stuff. We should make a movie. We should do this. And I kind of got way down the track of what that could look like. And as I was getting myself out further and further to the edge, way over my skis, I recognized that my father and Jay Van Andel were not with me. And my dad looked at Jay and said, "Jay, what do you think?" And Jay just shook his head as he was looking at me in disgust. Shook his head. He goes, No. He goes, "We don't blow things up. We build things up. That's the route that we're going to take. We're going to rebuild it. We're going to do it right. And even if it costs a little more and it's a little higher risk, that's where we're going to go." So many times in life, until something gets really, really bad, until we really get pushed out of our comfort zone, we don't want to make those decisions. But when we do, the approach, I think, that has resonated with me in my life is that you go and you don't blow up the institution. You reform it. You work with it. You don't throw everything away from what's been done in the past like we talked last night. Many of you, all of you are involved in a lot of good things. But we can be better. So how do we think of the way of building things up, building things differently when we're in this state of an unsettled position? So that's kind of the first thing, just to let's maybe get our minds around this is unsettling. We're not where we want to be as a community. We haven't reached everybody. But there are lots of good things. We have a base upon which we can build. But we have to take action to do it. The second area, as we talk about, is coming up with that vision. And what's that vision look like? And again, we can look around in downtown. If you look at this building, look where we are right now. Someone had a vision. They put it in place. And there is a story in Grand Rapids of many years ago when downtown was not what it is today. And it was an embarrassment, and people were pushed out of their comfort zone. And they wanted to do things differently. And so a lot of people came around. Leaders came around. There was a grand vision. That turned into a grand action. A lot of good things happened. We can learn from that. But as we said, that was here. It may not have been at other parts of our community that also needed a grand vision and grand action. So sometimes in a vision, we can think of a both and. We don't need to necessarily stop something that's happening here to start something else over here. I think we have the capacity and the capability as a community to figure out how to do both or more. So a couple thoughts about vision. It's always a little difficult. If you're familiar with the Amway business model in any way, we operate through a group of independent business owners that own their own Amway business, and that's how the Amway business works. And so I was at a dinner one night with one of our larger leaders in the Amway business, and his business was struggling a little bit, and he was very frustrated with what was going on. He said, and he looked at me, he said, "Doug, what's your vision for Amway? I got to know, what's your vision?" And I turned right around back to him and I said, "It's your business. What's your vision?" "My vision is to help your vision become a reality. My vision is to align with your vision. Your vision is to align with ours. We got to figure this out together." You can't pass that responsibility to somebody else. So we're not here to try to articulate that, but there are a couple elements that I would invite you to consider that may be part of a vision, that we may want to come up with, maybe together, maybe a few of us, maybe individually. I don't know exactly. But there's a few elements that I think are going to be important in that way. One, being better. Two, all people. We talked about a lot of good things that are happening, but we haven't reached everybody yet. We can do better. Something about reaching everybody. Being better. A couple of those things strike my mind that need to be part of our challenge, of our vision of how we want to go forward. There's the idea, and the thought with Jeff last night was to remind us of the right principles, if you will, the American idea, if not the entity of the United States of America. Because as we talked last night, and as Jeff said, we immediately fumbled and failed with our execution, kind of like watching the Detroit Lions for most of my life. But they figured it out. Next year, they're going to the Super Bowl, baby. They are going to the Super Bowl, and they're going to win. Got to believe. But we fumbled and we failed as a country. But those ideas still changed the world. These ideas of freedom. And if you look at the progress of human flourishing throughout history, it's basically a flat line, and the human existence was not great until about that time when some of these ideas began to grab traction. Some of these ideas that were embedded in the Declaration started to grab traction, even when they were poorly executed. Even when people were left out, some of those ideas gained traction. So how do we wrestle with that, and how do we think how good it would be if we fixed that? And we did make it better for all people in our community, all of our neighbors. I think there's something there for us to wrestle with and to bring forward, because the whole idea is that we could be more perfect. Even at that time, as Jeff said last night, they knew their shortcomings. They couldn't get over them. Maybe it's a time for us to figure out how we get over that. This idea of moving forward, these principles of human progress that have demonstrated over time the ability for people to achieve a better way and a better life. Something in there, again, poorly executed, but we have reason, I think, for optimism. We're not stuck. You know, my dad grew up in the times of the Depression and World War II, two real challenging times. And through both of those times, the messages that he got from his father during the Depression was someday I'm going to get my job back. Someday we're going to get back into our house because they lost their house. Someday it's going to get better. Someday we're going to get through this. This idea of we're not stuck. There's a better future out there. During World War II, Dad and Jay would exchange letters back and forth between each other. Someday Richie, Jay would write, this war is going to end. Someday we're going to have a chance to get in business together. Someday we're going to be back home. This idea of optimism, saying we're not stuck. We can do things differently, and we can find a better way forward. It will take courage. It will take staking a few bold stakes in the ground, if you will, but it can be done. So I think those are some of the elements that we may want to think about in vision. And then the next one is, what's the strategy? How do you take it down to a strategy and an action plan? Okay, all great stuff. That's not great. What are we going to do? Well, in the early discussions with this, we realized that throughout a lot of the history in Grand Rapids, there's tons of strategic plans that have been created. And there's tons of strategic plans that are on bookshelves collecting dust because they were all like some one person's vision and they never took root. The idea here is to say we want to spark a movement. That's going to include everybody's vision and everyone's strategy. Sure, we're going to have a direction. We're going to have some guiding principles that need to be there so we're all going in the same direction so we can really make progress. But it's going to be up to you. And we're going to have to think differently. We had a lot of management conferences at Amway over the years where we kept trying to be innovative and creative, because we were a little stuck sometimes, right? And we got to be more innovative. We got to get out there. And so we tried a lot of new things. And some of them worked, most of them didn't. It's okay. But we had a speaker come in and he said, sometimes new means new. You start brand new and that's a completely new idea and you go, sometimes it's taking the things that you already have and it's just putting them together in a different way. You don't have to throw it all out. Just think a little bit more broadly. Work outside of your silo. And that was the main idea here. I'm looking at Shanae here with TriShare. Okay, childcare, we got an issue. Okay, we can fix it. Okay, we got the real issue with the family. But the businesses, they have an interest in getting that. The state's been involved. Okay, well, there's 3 partners, so we can create something. Well, if you think, well, maybe the healthcare community should get involved with that. That could maybe help it more. Maybe there's other people that could get involved. That's just a real simple example. If we continue to expand the conversation, could we put it together differently and make it better? What could we do? So that's some of the stuff. Let's stay innovative because it's going to require hundreds of initiatives. There's not going to be one with lots of parts. That may be an element. You may have a strategy that's really big and bold and has a lot of parts. That's great. Probably not going to be enough to change the community. So you're going to need to partner or work with others who have their own. There's going to be hundreds of initiatives and we're all going to have to create them. It's not going to be just one as we build it together. And so what this time together is just to, again, spark the ideas for you to create it. There was a movie, I think it was on the education system called Waiting for Superman. And I don't think there's going to be a caped crusader that's going to come in and fix all this for us. But it's going to be the supermen and women in this room and in our community who are going to do it. There's never one easy solution, no matter how, if we could just get this one person elected, if this one CEO would do that, if this one hospital leader or doctor would do that, if this one educator would do that, if this one thing would, all those are part of the solution, but there's not going to be one solution or one person. All of you are the supermen and women who are going to make a difference. Years ago, I was at Steelcase going into their learning center, and I saw a quote. It said, "Nothing changes until the leader changes." Nothing's going to change until the leaders in this community decide to make a change. And we can have confidence because we've seen it happen. We've seen it happen. We've seen it happen in some big ways. We've seen it happen in some small ways. We've seen it happen. We know it can work. But it's not going to be the person next to you. Well, it might be. In front of you or behind you. It's going to be you. So I want to encourage as I close here just to say, make it personal. Make it personal to you. What are you going to do? When we leave here, usually you come to a conference, you leave, okay, everybody, 3 things, go home and do these things. It's going to be one thing. What are you going to do? That's your homework. What are you going to do? Who are you going to talk to? Who did you meet? What are the ideas that resonated with you? What can you do to make it better? We're going to very deliberately bounce it back to you. I know that Justin and the Thrive and Prosper team, the whole idea was to not create an entity. Just a group of people that can kind of work with other groups of people. Because we want to empower you, your ideas, and the things that you can do to make a better Grand Rapids and in better West Michigan. So that's the idea behind today. Thank you for taking your time to come with us. And I'm going to get out of your way. You've been sick of listening to me now, so I'm going to turn it back to Joe. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the day.